Want to get this briefing by email? Here's the sign up. Good evening. Here's the latest. Craig Ruddle, Associated Press 1. At least 8 people were killed in what the authorities called a lone wolf terror attack near the World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan. The attacker struck more than a dozen people as he careened along a Hudson River bike path for nearly 20 blocks in a rented Home Depot pickup. He jumped out with pellet guns, was shot by the police and is in custody. 2 law enforcement officials said the 29-year-old assailant was heard yelling "God is great" in Arabic. The police were adding additional security to the village Halloween parade, scheduled to begin nearby shortly. Check back for updates on this developing story. Tom Brenner, The New York Times 2. Our White House correspondent writes that yesterday's indictments of Paul Manafort, President Trump's former campaign manager, and his business associate, Rick Gates, amounted to a political body blow to Mr. Trump, even if they did not implicate him. Few people knew the young, low-level volunteer named George, who has already proven to be a liar. On Twitter, President Trump belittled George Papadopoulos, the campaign advisor who pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI about how he sought to meet with Russians offering dirt on Hillary Clinton. Turns out there are many men named George Papadopoulos, some of whom spent the day fielding calls from confused reporters. We collected the best writing from the right and left about the case, and the indictments of Mr. Trump's former campaign manager and his business associate. And we discussed them on our podcast, The Daily. Eric Thayer for The New York Times 3. Lawyers for Facebook, Google and Twitter went to Capitol Hill for marathon hearings with the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee about how Russia used their platforms to spread misinformation and propaganda during last year's presidential election. All 3 companies revealed far more Russia-linked activity than previously disclosed. Russian agents disseminated posts that reached 126 million users on Facebook and published more than 131,000 messages on Twitter and over 1,000 videos on YouTube. Our behavioral science reporter recently explained the psychological factors that make us so vulnerable to misinformation on social media. Alex Wong, Getty Images 4. Elsewhere in Washington, House Republicans were busy with last-minute negotiations on their tax plan. They're supposed to unveil it tomorrow. And uproar surged over comments by John Kelly, above the White House chief of staff, that the lack of an ability to compromise led to the Civil War in an interview on Fox News. Historians have spent decades documenting the central role of slavery in causing the conflict, and preceding it, the decades of compromises over African Americans' freedom. Stephen Crowley, The New York Times 5. California is exporting some of the loudest new voices on the right. The state as a whole is a bright blue bulwark of the liberal resistance. Yet it gave us Stephen Miller and Steve Bannon, above, and Andrew Breitbart, among others. There's a rebellious tone to conservatism in California that doesn't exist in places where conservatism is actually a governing force, said Ben Shapiro, who runs a right-leaning website from Sherman Oaks. Jim Coley, Associated Press 6. 3 Dartmouth College professors are under criminal investigation for alleged UAL misconduct. All 3 work in the college's Department of Psychological and Brain Sciences, and their research included studies of UAL desire and attractiveness. Netflix suspended production on House of Cards, after Kevin Spacey was accused of making an unwanted UAL advance toward a 14-year-old in the 80s. Our journalists and lawyers explained why we sometimes employ terms like non-consensual UAL relationship and forced instead of rape in our coverage of these stories. Via Agence France-Presse, Getty Images 7. In Germany, controversy broke out over plans to honor Anne Frank, the teenage diarist who died in the Holocaust, by naming a high-speed train after her. Historical amnesia charged the director of the Jewish Museum in Frankfurt. After being discovered in their Amsterdam Canal House hideout, the Franks were sent by train to Auschwitz. 8. We debuted a new video series, Interneting with Amanda Hess, which examines culture in all its strangeness. Episode 1 is the dark art of political memes. To hear about future episodes, sign up here. Jamie Squire, Getty Images 9. The Houston Astros are on the verge of the franchise's first World Series title, but they'll have to beat the Dodgers at home in Los Angeles to realize that dream. 8 p.m. Eastern, Fox. Above, the Astros celebrating after Game 5. We'll have live updates and analysis from Game 6 here. 10. Finally, happy Halloween! Here's a collection of our spookiest science stories to entertain you in between trick-or-treaters, including some videos of undead arachnids and boa constrictors. It's just a little bit of science. You're not afraid, are you? And we investigated the thrill of being scared. The love of haunted houses, horror-s, and maybe those arachnids, it turns out, is linked to your dopamine levels. Have a great night, blank. Your evening briefing is posted at 6 p.m. Eastern. And don't miss your morning briefing, posted weekdays at 6 a.m. Eastern, and your weekend briefing, posted at 6 a.m. Sundays. Want to catch up on past briefings? You can browse them here. If photographs appear out of order, please download the updated New York Times app from iTunes or Google Play. What did you like? What do you want to see here? Let us know at briefing@nytimes.com.